Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. So we appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. Coming up today, we will be pitting vegan diets, Mediterranean diets, head to head in a battle for weight loss supremacy. Which is the best for losing those excess pounds? Well, a new study put them to the test, and one of the study's lead authors, Dr. Neal Barnard, is here with the results. So intriguing, so fascinating. We're going to get into that. Plus, he's going to be helping to raise your health IQ even further when we open up the doctor's mailbag and take your questions. Great ones already coming in, like, does the brain cause the body to crave fat if you're eating a low-fat diet? How does that work? Well, we're going to find out when we open up that doctor's mailbag. So if there's a question on your mind that you would like to ask, go ahead and put that in the comments or the chat box right now. You can also tweet it to us using the hashtag ExamRoomLive. But first, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Barnard to the show to talk about this extraordinary new study putting vegan diets, Mediterranean diets, head to head in the battle of weight loss supremacy. Interesting study, Dr. Barnard.
Yeah, and really important because so many people are trying to think, what's the best diet? And we've had more than a few people say, well, I really thought a vegan diet was the way to go. But then I read in a magazine, they said, no, you don't really have to do that. Just frankly, it sounds kind of sexy. You're maybe driving down the coast of Italy and you're going to have a glass of red wine and so forth. And so the question is a Mediterranean diet the best diet? Is a vegan diet a better diet? We decided to put it to the test.
And let's talk a little bit about the Mediterranean diet. I mean, the majority of people, I would assume, who are hearing this and watching this right now are very familiar with the vegan diet, the plant-based diet. But then the Mediterranean diet, maybe not so much. So what is the Mediterranean diet?
Okay, let me share my screen and give you a little background on this. The Mediterranean diet really owes its origins to Ancel Keys. Ancel Keys was a researcher at the University of Minnesota. And I am guessing probably on some February morning, he was looking out his window thinking, what am I doing here in Minneapolis when I could be in southern Italy? And he took a real interest in the health of Italy in particular, because they had a pretty enviably low rate of heart disease. This is one of his graphs going back to the 1950s, where on the x-axis you see fat intake. More fat as the further up you go to the right. On the y-axis, you see deaths from heart disease. And look who's way up top on the right, the USA. Really fatty diet and a lot of heart disease. And going down a little bit, Canada, Australia, England, and then down you see Italy, doing much better, a lower fat diet, a lot less heart disease. And then at the very left was Japan. Well, his compromise was, let's have a look at Italy. And so the Mediterranean region is, of course, vast. It includes everything from Spain past France, Italy, and all the way around to Lebanon and Israel, and then all across northern Africa. So there are many, many, many different cuisines that could be called Mediterranean. But what he said is, well, wait a minute. We're going to say it means plant foods mostly, but not completely. And we'll have locally grown foods, and your dessert will be fruit, not pudding or something. But when it comes to cooking fats, instead of butter, we use olive oil. So that's kind of the Italian influence. Dairy products were included, but low. Eggs included, but not too many. Red meat, some, but not a huge amount. And some wine every day. And that was sort of the definition of Mediterranean diets. Now, I can hear you screaming, you think, wait a minute, a Mediterranean diet could be a North African diet. It could be a Lebanese diet. Well, this was the definition that researchers have really used of that term. Now, interestingly enough, modern researchers tend to think of it as being really oily, slathering olive oil all over everything. But Ancel Keys actually took as his model the town of Nicotera, Italy. And there, when they measured it, the diet was fattier than a low-fat vegan diet, but not as fatty as say, a typical American diet. If they used oil, it was olive oil. But they weren't using a lot of any kind of oil at that time. Okay, so researchers recently put this diet to a test. And the study was called PREDIMED. This was a big Spanish study with more than 7,000 participants. Everybody was at high risk for heart disease, and most of the people were pretty overweight. Here's what they did. They split the participants into 3 groups. Group 1, Mediterranean diet plus olive oil, about 4 tablespoons a day to be used as part of your cooking. Group 2, Mediterranean plus nuts, about an ounce per day. Group 3, nothing. Just a control diet, meaning keep doing what you're doing. And then over several years, they tracked people to see what happened. Specifically, did you live or did you die? And what they recommended, again, was the kinds of foods that Ansel Keys and others have talked about. Okay, so what happened? First thing, first 12 weeks of the study, everyone got on the scale. Kind of disappointing. After 12 weeks, the average weight loss, that's kilograms, but that's less than a quarter of a kilogram of weight loss for the oil group, and about a quarter of a kilogram for the other 2 over 12 weeks. That's really terrible. But then as time went on, they looked at who lived and who died, and whether you looked at all-cause mortality, dying from anything, or cardiovascular mortality, there was some suggestion that the oil group was doing better, but this was not statistically significant. The differences weren't big enough that you could really definitively say it was working. But then they did another analysis, and they said, well, let's just add up any kind of cardiovascular event. Yeah, dying, but also having a heart attack, having a stroke, anything, and let's lump them all together. And what they came up with was the control group, 4.4% of a bad event. But for the oil group, it was cut to 3.8%, and the nut group, it was cut to 3.4%. And that was their finding. They were able to take that to the New England Journal and convince people that a Mediterranean diet was okay. All right. However, some researchers said, I wonder if we can do better than that. They developed what they called a ProVegetarian scale. So they looked within the PredaMed people, the research participants, and they said, who here is eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and nuts and cereals and legumes and olive oil and potatoes and generally avoiding meat and fish and dairy and eggs and animal fats? Because with 7,000 people, you had some people who were probably pretty much vegan. Okay, well, how did they do? Turned out that those people who were really strong on the pro-vegetarian scale, meaning they were doing the Mediterranean thing, but they were interpreting it not with chicken, but with chickpeas, they did really well. The further you went out in the pro-vegetarian line of things, in other words, the closer you were to vegan, the less likely you were to die of anything, and specifically cardiovascular mortality, really unlikely to die of that too. Okay, so what this study suggests is that a Mediterranean diet at its best is interpreted vegan style. So you have your spaghetti, not with meat sauce, not with fish, but with a tomato sauce. Okay, fair enough. So our research team decided, all right, let's do a head-to-head test, vegan versus Mediterranean, using exactly the PredaMed protocol. We brought in 62 participants, and half of them went Mediterranean. The other half went vegan. Then after 16 weeks, everybody stopped. We put them on the scale. We checked their blood pressure and their cholesterol, and then we switched diets. The Mediterranean people now started the vegan diet. The vegan people started the Mediterranean diet. And they did it for another 16 weeks. And then we put them on the scale again. And what did we find? Here's what we found. As the first 16 weeks were rolling by, the Mediterranean group, you see them at the top here, they lost, now this is kilograms. What is that? They dropped from 97 kilograms to 96 kilograms. Not so good. But the vegans, look at that. They dropped from about between 98 and 99 down to close to 90 kilograms. So much, much more robust weight loss in the vegan group. Then at 16 weeks, we stopped. Everybody was asked to just wait for 4 weeks, go back to their old diet, and then start the opposite diet. Now look at the top. That Mediterranean group that was having trouble losing weight, now they're gone to the vegan diet, and now they're losing weight more quickly. The group that had been vegan in the first 16 weeks then started Mediterranean, and what happened to them? The weight started coming back. Because why? They're eating fish, they're having some dairy, they're having oil and eggs, things they weren't having during the vegan phase. And now they're starting to gain weight. From a personal standpoint, I want to tell you that watching the participants go through these changes was really quite something. Many of them who were on the vegan diet, as you know, those of you who've done this, 16 weeks is more than enough time to accommodate to it. And you think, this is all right, this is pretty easy. And then when we took it away and said, no, now you've got to stop being vegan, you've got to go Mediterranean, many of them were angry. And as they saw the pounds coming back on, they were pretty upset, and they couldn't wait for the study to be over so they could go back to their vegan diet. Okay, a little bit more complicated slide. Every pair of lines you see shows you the weight results that each person had when they went vegetarian or vegan and when they went Mediterranean. Go way over on the left. You see that little tan line sticking up there? That is the first participant, and when he or she went on the Mediterranean diet, gained a little bit of weight. The green is on the vegan diet. That same person lost a lot of weight on the vegan diet. Okay, the second person, the tan line going up, that's another person who gained weight on the Mediterranean, but their green line goes way down, so they lost a lot of weight. What these numbers show us is the green lines are almost all down. That's vegan. On a vegan diet, most people lose weight. The tan lines are the Mediterranean. They're all over the map. Some people gain weight, some people lose weight. On average, you don't get anywhere. So what did we find? The average weight loss on the vegan diet, 6 kilograms in 16 weeks. The average weight loss on a Mediterranean diet, 0. Nothing. Okay, now look at total cholesterol though. Mediterranean diet, people dropped 3 points, not worth talking about. On a vegan diet, they dropped almost 19 points. That's good. LDL, or bad cholesterol, dropped about 0.5 point on the Mediterranean diet. Just chance fluctuation, really. On a vegan diet, dropped 15 points. That's clinically significant. And statistically significant too. Okay, now there was one good thing about the Mediterranean diet, and that was blood pressure. Blood pressure actually improved in both groups, but it did improve a little bit more in the Mediterranean group, 9 versus 3 point drop systolic, and 7 versus 4 point drop diastolic. So that was better for them. But overall, we have to say there is a winner. If you have a person who wants to lose some weight, going on a Mediterranean diet as defined by these research studies, with fish, with dairy, with a little bit of meat, with olive oil, it's going to really make it hard to lose weight. That fish, that dairy, that meat, it's going to be hard to get your cholesterol down. So a vegan diet is the way to go. Let me unshare my screen and we'll come back in.
A question for you. That slide that showed the results for all of the participants, there were a couple of outliers on there. I believe I saw at least one individual that wound up gaining weight on both diets. How closely were you able to monitor what it was your participants were eating?
Yeah, well, these were real people in real life. We didn't lock them up into a research ward or something like that. Now, there are studies that do that, where you make every meal for them and you absolutely control it. We wanted to be able to say, what will happen if you actually are doing this diet in your own home, with your own family, shopping at a store, because that's how people do diets. And it's true. We did have 1 or 2 people who gained weight on both diets. And these are people who are probably having some trouble following it. That's while that can happen, the vast majority of people had a terrific result with the plant-based diet, and the results of the Mediterranean diet were variable. But overall, for weight loss, it's really turned out to be a placebo, and that's important because a lot of people are attracted to that diet. A lot of people who really need help getting rid of weight are attracted to it. U.S. news rates, Mediterranean #1. I think that's because it sounds sexy. It sounds like people won't disagree with you, but as a clinical intervention, I think it's a mistake.
I want to go ahead and open up that doctor's mailbag. So if you have a question about the study that you would like to ask, go ahead and post that in the comments or in the chat box right now. Another question real quick before we take our first viewer question is, I want to explore the blood pressure results a little bit more. Why did you dive too deeply into perhaps why the Mediterranean diet showed a larger drop in blood pressure compared to the vegan diet? I don't think that it was like a huge difference, but it definitely had an edge.
Yeah, they did. And we don't really know the reasons for that. But we've known for a long time that plant-based diets do lower blood pressure, and both of the diets did that to a good degree. But what happens is more vegetables will bring in more potassium. The more you avoid sodium, the better off you're going to be with regard to blood pressure. But why that particular result came out, we're not too sure.
All right, let's go ahead now and open up that mailbag. We'll start with America, Let's Get Healthy. Man, what a great screen name that is. And boy, how appropriate when you're talking about a Mediterranean diet here. They want to know, is it better to just eat the olive instead of eating olive oil?
Anytime, absolutely. There is no faucet on the olive tree. So if you eat the olive itself, you get a little bit of olive oil, but you get the pulp and the fiber along with it. So nobody ate 40 olives, but it's really easy to get all of the oil from 40 olives if you take it as the olive oil itself. Now don't get me wrong. Olive oil is way better than chicken fat, way better than lard, way better than butter. So people who are cooking with olive oil, that is better than the animal fats. Specifically, chicken has about 30% of its fat is in the saturated form. That's the bad one. For olive oil, it cuts that down to 14. So that's good. But using no oil at all, using a good nonstick pan, that cuts that saturated fat down to 0.
I think maybe one of the more prescribed diets by doctors is the DASH diet for high blood pressure. But in the medical circles, how popular has the Mediterranean diet become as far as doctors giving that as advice to their patients?
It's become a popular thing for doctors to recommend. Because they sometimes think that the patient will react to it better than if you say you should go vegan, because it sounds so easy to do. The problem is that it's really like a generation ago. Doctors were afraid to tell patients to quit smoking because it sounded too drastic. So they would say, you ought to cut down. And that's a mistake because you don't get very far with that, and you don't get very far with the Mediterranean diet, at least in the way that it's typically interpreted.
Edith is wondering whether exercise, age, and race and all of those factors were considered for the study.
Oh, yes. When we do these, and you'll see this if you get your hands on the published report, we look at both groups and we try to make sure that they're as equivalent as possible as they start. But in this study, it was a little different from a typical randomized study where I'll take 100 people, 50 go vegan, 50 go Mediterranean, and then you see how they do, and you're wondering, are the ages comparable between the groups? Are the races comparable? That kind of stuff. Our study was different. It was a crossover trial. So everyone did both diets, and you're comparing people to themselves. And so each person did both diets. And so the racial makeup, the ages and everything were identical because it was the people themselves that were the point of comparison. And that makes it an extremely strong study.
Susan was wondering, and I'm sure that I think self-reported here as far as the caloric, the food that was being eaten. She wants to know, Susan does, whether portions were controlled in this study.
They were not. In both diets, the way that they are supposed to be prescribed is without saying you have to limit your calories to 1,500 a day or something like that. In both cases, people were told to eat what they wanted. Now, we didn't encourage them to overdo it, but they were not restricted in the calories that they would take in.
And there's a real quick before we open it up to a more broad spectrum of questions. There is a debate about why the term vegan was used in the study as opposed to plant-based. Is that just kind of a flip of the coin for you?
No, well, yes and no. They're slightly different terms. A vegan diet means no animal products are used. So that's really clear. Plant-based to some people means no animal products are used. To some people, it means I'm mostly going to avoid animal products. Some people just use the word plant-based to mean I'm vegan, but I'm embarrassed to tell people about it, and plant-based sounds nicer. So we, in this case, used the word vegan, and the participants understood that animal products were not to be included, so that was easy for them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, inside baseball, from the media standpoint, I'd like to use the term vegan because far more people know it. And if the goal is to get more people interested in taking charge of their health and making it easier for them to find the resources that they need to do that, they're far more likely to search using the term vegan than they are plant-based. So that's why that gets used more often on the exam room. Vegan does than the term plant-based. So
Yeah, although, yeah, I think you're right. But things are changing and terms change over time. And we'll see where we end up on this. For some audiences, people really prefer the term plant-based. For others, they prefer the term vegan. I once submitted an article to a major medical journal, and I used the word plant-based in the title. And the editor wrote back and said, no, this is a vegan diet. Use vegan. And I kind of thought they would like the term plant-based a little bit better, but no, they said, let's be more specific. That's what it is. Times change, and I don't fight about these things. There are times when one term applies a little better and the other term might apply better at other times.
absolutely. Well said, my friend. All right, let's go ahead and open it up to a wide range of questions here with the doctor's mailbag. We're going to start with a question from Apis. Wanted to know, will not eating enough fat in your diet cause you to overeat and tell your body to crave fatty foods?
Probably not. What will happen, though, is if you reduce the fat content of your diet, you will have some cravings for a little while for fatty things because your tastes are set by what you have been eating in the past 4 or 5, 6 days. And people will experience this. In fact, I experienced it in my own life when I was a teenager. My mom announced we were not going to have whole milk anymore. And she said, it's only going to be skim milk now. And we all thought it tasted really watery and it didn't even look right. But after about a week, we were totally used to it. And then I remember one day, some months later, she by mistake bought some whole milk. And we couldn't drink it because it was like cream. And so the point that I'm making is that your taste buds accommodate to what you've been eating in recent times. So if you're used to fatty foods, that's what you're going to want. But once you get used to a lower fat intake, you don't want that at all.
Here's a great question from Tracy. We saw the 16-week study and the drop in cholesterol, but she's wondering, how long does it take for someone to lower their cholesterol on a whole food plant-based diet? Does it take that whole 16 weeks or does it happen sooner?
Happen sooner. I would, if you are making a diet change now because you just left your doctor's office and you've got your cholesterol slip in your hand and you're thinking, oh, I've got to do something. I would suggest that you go completely vegan, keep oils really low, and wait about maybe 3 months before you get tested again, because you want to see kind of how far you can go. The truth is, if you got tested within 4 weeks or even 2 weeks, your cholesterol would be lower even by that point. It's really quite rapid. But to see the full effect, I'd wait 2 or 3 months.
Question from Keeney, talking about helping people get healthy and reaching them. Just some great personal advice here. What is the best way to talk to somebody for the first time about the idea of adopting a plant-based diet?
When we have patients who come into the Barnard Medical Center here, or maybe they're coming in for a research study, it's really important for them to first understand, why are we recommending a diet? Let's say a person has diabetes. They have probably never heard that the fat that gets in your muscle cells is causing your insulin not to behave properly. And so I want to get that fat out of your muscle cells. And the way we do that is with a diet that doesn't have any animal fat in it and keeps the oils low. So once the person understands that, then they can go from there. So step one, understand why we're doing the diet that we're doing. If it's a low-fat vegan diet for weight loss, understand fat has 9 calories in a gram. Carbohydrate has only 4. So I'm not going to worry so much about carbohydrate. I'm going to really get away from the animal fats, get away from the vegetable oils. Okay, once you understand why, 2 steps for jumping in, 2 steps for the how. Step 1, take 7 days and don't change your diet yet. Like, let's say today, you're thinking, all right, I'm going to go vegan. Don't change yet. Take the next 7 days, and during that time, make a list of vegan foods that you would like to eat. Foods with no animal products. So for breakfast, cornflakes with almond milk or veggie sausage. For lunch, I'll have a pizza without cheese. Whatever it is, make your list, take 7 days, and in this week, you'll come up with a great list. After that week is done, step 2, take 3 weeks, and during those 3 weeks, make it all vegan all the time. No animal products at all. And see how you do. 3 weeks is very short, so you can do it, and you've already got your list, so it's very easy. At the end of 3 weeks, two things will have happened. Number one, you are going to be slimmer and healthier. You can feel the physical changes. The other thing is that your tastes are accommodating, kind of like mine did when I was a kid to the lower fat milk, for example. As your tastes accommodate, you'll come to really prefer the vegan foods. So step one, first of all, understand why you want to change. And then step one is take 7 days to make your list, take 3 weeks to put it to the test. It will change your life.
Next question comes to us from Gate, wants to know, how can I get my bones and joints to be stronger?
Bones and joints. If the question is bone density, like osteoporosis, you need calcium. Green leafy vegetables, great source. There's some in beans as well. Secondly, you need vitamin D to absorb the calcium, and that comes from the sun. If you're in New Jersey this morning, you might not be getting much sun, so a vitamin D supplement may be appropriate for you. Most doctors recommend 2,000 international units a day. The vitamin D helps you absorb calcium from the foods you eat. Number 3, exercise. Give your bones a reason to live. And that's kind of the basics of a good bone building exercise. With regard to your joints, do get good advice from your doctor about exercise that you are doing. The more you exercise safely, the better it can be. Some people use things like glucosamine and chondroitin, which are now vegan sourced, which seem to have some evidence that they can be helpful for the joints. So hope that's helpful.
Linda says that she went vegan because she's lactose intolerant. When she began, she was 138 pounds. Today, she's 115 pounds, and wondering whether that is too little for somebody who will be turning 69 years old in just about 2 weeks.
First of all, congratulations. I'm sure your digestive tract is happy that you made this change, and the rest of your body is smiling too. To understand if your weight is in a good range, let me encourage you to go online and look for the BMI calculator. That's body mass index, BMI calculator. There are lots of them online. You plug in your height, you plug in your weight, and a number will pop up, and that's your BMI. And if it's between 18.5 and 25, we call that the healthy range. What we mean is you're at the lowest risk for developing diabetes or heart disease or weight-related cancers, that kind of stuff. So you're wondering, am I too skinny? If you're below 18.5, the statistics would say, yeah, you're too skinny. But have a look and you'll see.
All right, next question comes to us from Queen Logics. She says, I do a lot of cycling and don't eat any oil, but the scale isn't budging. What am I doing wrong?
Okay, well, I'm not sure you're doing anything wrong, but here are the steps that we take. We make sure that there are no animal products in the diet. So that means we're eating lots of beans, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and then we set aside cooking oils, nuts. And for a person who's really trying to lose weight, we're going to set aside nuts, nut butters, avocados. That's about it. And if you put that to work, for most people, it's really hard to carry excess weight. If your weight is already in the good range, between 18.5 and 25, then you're not going to blow away. Your weight isn't going to really change very much because all you're losing with a low-fat vegan diet is excess body fat.
Here's an interesting one from Tempest. How does a plant-based diet affect someone with hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, as opposed to someone who's diabetic?
Okay, well, they both want to have diets to keep their blood sugar in the healthy range. And a vegan diet is great for that because A, it has plenty of healthy carbohydrate. The carbohydrate molecules, what they actually are, if you could look at a molecule that you took out of bread or a potato, it's sugar molecules all joined together in a chain. That's good. They're glucose molecules in your blood. They break apart and they go to your brain to power your brain. They go to your muscles. They go to all the cells of your body to power them. Glucose is your power source. So if you're hypoglycemic, that means you don't have enough. So the healthy complex carbohydrates in a vegan diet, in beans and vegetables, whole grains, and also in fruits, they will provide the glucose you need. The other great thing that they do is if you choose the healthiest ones, they keep your blood sugar from going too high. Because you probably experienced this. If your blood sugar peaks because you ate say white bread or something like that, your blood pressure went high, then your body reacted by making insulin that makes it go too low. So you want to stay in the middle. What are those foods? Foods that keep you in the middle are the low glycemic index foods. Beans. In fact, let me just walk you through it. Instead of sugar, don't have table sugar, have fruit. Fruit is sweet, but it's not going to affect your blood sugar too much. Instead of wheat bread, you're going to be better off with rye bread. Instead of kitty goose cereals, you know what I mean, the cold cereals, the ones that have a toy inside, it's going to spike your blood sugar. You don't want that. Instead, have oatmeal or have bran cereal that's steady on your blood sugar. One surprise, pasta is okay. It's on the good list. Even white pasta, it's pretty good for your blood sugar. Potatoes, white potatoes, okay, but really a sweet potato is going to be better for you. With all of these things, if you mix foods together, the net effect on your blood sugar is just the average of everything. So let's say I have a potato and I think, oh, that's going to spike my blood sugar. But you have it with some black beans, then the net effect is it's more gentle on your blood sugar. So eat your beans, eat your fruit, plenty of green vegetables, and you should be in the right zone.
We'll take a couple of more here while we have the time on the doctor's mailbag. So keep on posting yours in the comments or the chat. Here is an interesting one from Edith. This is something that I think a lot of people are struggling with right now, especially if you live here in the Washington, D.C. area where the forecast is calling for snow for the next 3 days. Edith says that she always gains weight in the winter. She tries to eat warm foods, but she just gets hungrier. So what is the best way to lose weight during these cold winter days?
Yeah, you are not alone. People watching this are all nodding, saying, that's me too. It's your inner squirrel. It knows that it's winter. And so in the same way that squirrels run around and they bury nuts in the fall and they try to dig them up to keep going, you've got the same thing. Our bodies are programmed to get hungrier in the winter. It's the cooler temperatures, the shorter days, and the darkness even will do it. And by the way, it doesn't kick in February. It starts you'll start experiencing this in about October, and your weight will go up. And then this time of the year, the more you can get out and you see, hopefully, the occasional cloudless day, the days are starting to get longer. It takes a while for the temperatures to catch up. But with the lengthening of the days, you'll discover that appetite boost tends to come down. The best way to deal with excess eating is to make sure that everything in your house is something you're not too worried about if you eat it. So the snack foods are not chocolate. They're not potato chips, because those pack in so much fat that you know where it's going to go. But things like fruit, have an abundance of it. And if you have another banana or another orange or apple or some grapes, they're just not really very calorie dense. So make sure that everything that you are surrounded by is a healthy food.
Low carb diets. Let's end with this. Low carb diets, all the rage right now. A lot of people think carbs are the devil. So here's a great question from Cindy. Wants to know, can you go vegan and not gain weight if you have been on a low carb diet for many years? Or is your metabolism damaged beyond repair at that point and you're just stuck having to eat that low carb diet?
Okay, that's such a great question, because so many people have done low carb diets. They've eventually become disgusted by them, or they've been told by their doctor they should stop it because their cholesterol is getting out of control, or they're worried that they're eating meat and gravy and they're wondering, what's this going to do to my colon cancer risk? And I can't be doing this low carb stuff anymore. Okay, you transition to a healthy, low fat, plant-based diet, and typically weight regain is not something you're going to see. Now, it'll be a little bit of an adjustment for you to have made that change, but it's a good one for you. The only thing I would suggest is your tastes on a ketogenic diet have been goofed up. They tend to get fat oriented. So when you go to a low fat vegan diet, it will seem light to you. So make sure you have a real mix of foods with grains and beans and vegetables and fruits. Keep the oils low and give yourself about a week to maybe 10 days or 2 weeks for your tastes to come down to the lower fat taste. And your body is going to be rejoicing that you've made this change.
Let's go ahead and close up that doctor's mailbag for today. If we did not get to your question, we will save it and do our best to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. So keep on posting it in the comments or the chat box. And of course, tweet it at PCRM or at Chuck Carroll WLC. Make sure that you use that hashtag Exam Room Live. By the way, we have new episodes here on Facebook and YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and new podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, now on Pandora. Those are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we are raising your nutrition IQ 5 days a week, my friend. So go ahead and get your daily dose of the exam room and hopefully go on to lead that healthier life. Coming up Friday here on the show, we're going to be joined by social media star John Lewis. You may know him as Badass Vegan. Very just interesting story. I mean, talk about rags to, I guess the only way to call it is vegan riches. Goes on a plant-based diet after being overweight and playing basketball for years and just takes his fitness to the next level. And now he is teaming up with Keegan Kuhn from What the Health, the director of that. They are putting out a new documentary called They're Trying to Kill Us, taking a look at the food system through the lens of the hip-hop culture. Got some of the biggest rap artists in the culture, in the game, to go ahead and talk about some of the issues that are driving health inequalities in the country. Fascinating documentary. So he will be here on the show on Friday to talk all about that. And in the meantime, if you would like to take charge of your health right now, maybe you didn't ask a question today, you want to ask it one-on-one with a doctor or a dietitian, go ahead and make an appointment over at the Barnard Medical Center. You can do that via a telemedicine visit, as a matter of fact. Pick up the phone, call 202-527-7500 to schedule your appointment, or you see it on the screen right now, barnardmedical.org. Telemedicine visits available now in more than a quarter of the country. Insurance is accepted. So barnardmedical.org or 202-527-7500 for a full list of states where services are available. And that, my friend, is all the time that we have today. I want to say thank you one more time to Dr. Neal Barnard for helping us to raise our nutrition IQ, and to the crew behind the scenes that is making the magic happen. Thank you guys as always. And to you, my exam roomies, thank you so very much for tuning in and learning alongside of us. For everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again Friday. But until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.